The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
First baby? First child? Well, you can sit down, don't worry. First child. Life is very different, isn't it? Yeah, you can't sleep through the night anymore, can you? No. We welcome them, and we come to pray with them as well today as we share the good news. This reading from Luke's Gospel is unique to Luke. There is no comparison to it in any of the other three Gospels, and it really is one of my favorite parables and one of my favorite stories. But it is very challenging as well. C.S. Lewis, one of my favorite writers, I have not really read him recently, but I used to when I was in seminary. I read quite a bit of C.S. Lewis. But he was an Oxford academic. He taught, I think, literature, but he's probably more famous because later in life he converted to Christianity. And his conversion really was brought about because of the witness of other people that he taught with and how he saw that they lived and how they treated one another. And somebody once asked him, did you convert to Christianity? Do you practice religion because it makes you feel good? And his response was, no, that's not the reason I do it. If I wanted to feel good, I would drink a bottle of wine. Makes sense. But they said, why Christianity? What is it about Christianity? Is it because you feel like it's an easy way of life? He says, no, if you want an easy way of life, you certainly should not become a Christian, because it challenges you tremendously. And I thought of that this past week as I was reflecting on these readings, because I think this is one of probably the more challenging parables that Jesus gives to us. It's a story really of two people, this rich man and this poor man. The poor man's name is Lazarus. We do not know the rich man's name, but the rich man is abundantly wealthy, dressed in fine robes and purple clothing, the symbol of royalty and wealth in Jesus' day. And the people who were hearing this story would have identified right away that this person was pretty well off. And he ate, and he ate, and he ate. And it was not uncommon for people in Jesus' day. They were so wasteful that even they would use, instead of what we would use, what we would call napkins, they would use like pieces of pita bread, things that we would eat, and to wipe their fingers with and such, and then they'd throw it on the floor. And that's how wealthy this person was. He had food that he could literally waste. And Lazarus sat at his table, at the foot of his table, and he would just kind of eat the scraps that fell from the floor. What was left over, if you will? Probably what's most egregious is that the rich man never saw Lazarus. Didn't even realize he existed, didn't even realize he was there, sitting at his feet and taking the scraps that were left over. And when death came to both of them, Lazarus ended up in heaven, taken by the angels, Jesus says, to the bosom of Abraham, the great patriarch, the great ancestor in faith, and the rich man went to this place of torment, to the netherworld, the place where God is not present, what we in our day and age would call hell. So there they find themselves, and what's so intriguing about this story is that the rich man continues to not see Lazarus as an equal. Tell Lazarus to dip his finger in some cool water and come cool my tongue. Lazarus is simply a servant, no matter what state they are in. He does not see him for God's creation, who he is. And that is the danger and the difficulty that I think Jesus is putting forth. And Abraham and the rich man have this dialogue and such, but it is, in a sense, a challenge, because the rich man says, well, then send someone to warn my brothers who are doing the same thing. They have Moses and the prophets. They have the scriptures. They know this stuff. But if someone would come back from the dead, certainly they would believe. Probably not. It's a challenge. In a sense, it's almost like pokes us in our eye, because it really challenges us with the question, are we like the rich man? Are we so wasteful? Do we, kind of consume and consume and consume and not worry about the other around us, that there are people who are neglected of basic needs? That's the challenge. That's the question. In our day and age, it's kind of easy to kind of just almost dismiss the poor. Can't tell you how many times I've said, heard people say, it's just like, well, the poor, there's plenty of jobs out there. They could go get one. Like, it's just so easy. If you've ever spent time with people and you hear the complexities of their story, their physical ailments, their emotional ailments, their life histories and such, it's just not as cut and dried as easy as sometimes we like to believe. I do it too. It's very easy to get very judgmental, and to just kind of make statements like that. It's probably the way the rich man dismissed Lazarus in his own day and age. But Jesus, in a sense, says something very different should come from us. Being a Christian, being a follower of Christ means we have to see the neglected in front of us. We have to open our eyes, if you will. But then we have to do something about it as well. There's a great story that I read many years ago that I think kind of sums this up. There was a man who went to heaven, and when he got to the pearly gates, he said to St. Peter, he said, I'm kind of shopping around. I'd like to know what the difference is between heaven and between hell. And so the man says, well, come on, I'll show you. And so he takes them down this hallway, and there's a room, and he opens it up. And when he opens up the room, there is, in the center of the room, there is this round table, very big table. In the middle of it, there is this big kettle of soup, and it smells good. It just permeates the smell that comes through it. And all around the table, there are people who are sitting, and